The AI revolution is happening right now, but it's got a dirty little secret. It's incredibly hungry, and it runs on a fuel we're quickly running out of: electricity. This explosive growth is sparking a frantic, high-stakes race between the world's biggest tech companies for a whole new kind of power. And their answer? It's one of the most controversial on the planet: nuclear energy. So let's get into it. Okay, let's start with a number, a really big one: 1,300 terawatt hours. That's the amount of electricity data centers alone are projected to need every single year by 2035. This isn't just a small increase, it's an absolute energy shockwave that is forcing everyone to completely rethink our entire global power grid. So to give you an idea of just how massive that number is, that's the same amount of electricity the entire country of Japan, the world's fourth largest economy, uses in a whole year. That's the scale of the new demand AI is creating out of thin air. It just shows you the sheer magnitude of the challenge ahead.
All right, so here's our game plan. First, we're going to look at this new global race for AI energy. Then we'll dive into the specific multi-billion-dollar nuclear bets that big tech is making. We'll compare the different reactor technologies, zoom out to see what this all means for energy sovereignty, then touch on the new economics of AI, and finally, we'll hit the very real roadblocks standing in the way of all this.
You see, this explosion in energy demand isn't just a technical headache for some engineers to figure out. No, it's really the starting gun for a brand new kind of geopolitical competition, one where having enough gigawatts is just as important as having armies. And the ultimate prize in this whole race is something called sovereign AI. Think of it as a country's ability to control its own technological destiny, to build and run its own advanced AI using its own power, its own data, and its own people. And the key takeaway here is, without energy independence, there is no sovereign AI. It's just that simple. And NVIDIA's CEO Jensen Huang just nailed it with this quote. He said, "Data is a nation's social intelligence, and you have to be able to process it inside your own borders." Well, that takes massive, reliable, homegrown power. All of a sudden, energy security isn't just about keeping the lights on anymore. It's about national intelligence. So, who are the big players making these moves? Well, the public grid just can't keep up. So tech giants like Microsoft, Amazon, and Google are now pouring billions of their own dollars into their own nuclear strategies. But as you're about to see, they're not all playing the same game.
Now, what I find fascinating here is how each company's strategy really reflects its corporate DNA. Microsoft is all about speed. They're trying to restart the famous 3 Mile Island reactor to get 835 megawatts online by 2028. Amazon's playing the long game, betting on scale by planning a whole campus of new small modular reactors. And then you've got Google, betting everything on pure innovation, partnering on experimental molten salt reactors that have literally never been used commercially before.
And believe me, it is not just them. The whole industry is making this pivot. Meta is out there trying to line up several gigawatts of new nuclear power. But what Amazon is doing is really interesting. They're not just buying the power, they're directly investing in the reactor company, X Energy. That's a huge signal that they want total control over their energy future. And meanwhile, Oracle is making its own plans for data centers powered by multiple SMRs too. Okay, so this brings us to the actual technology. These companies are facing a really fundamental choice. Do you bet on proven, older tech just to get power as fast as possible? Or do you take a risk and pioneer brand new, potentially game-changing reactor designs? And this slide really lays out that crucial trade-off. On one side, you have Microsoft's approach: restart 3 Mile Island. It's fast, aiming for 2028, and it's relatively cheap. The huge catch? A mothballed nuclear plant has never, ever been successfully restarted in the US. Then on the other side, you have these new small modular reactors. They're scalable, sure, but they take way longer to build and can cost up to 6 times more per kilowatt. It's a classic battle: speed versus innovation. Now, Google's bet with Kairos Power is way out on the cutting edge. They're backing something called a molten salt reactor. So instead of using high-pressure water like a traditional reactor, it uses superheated liquid fluoride salt as a coolant. The potential upside is incredible. Amazing efficiency, and you can even store heat to generate electricity whenever you want. But the risk is just as high because it's totally unproven commercially. Amazon's choice, the SMR design from X Energy, tackles the biggest public fear about nuclear power head-on: safety. It uses something called trisofuel. Basically, they're these tiny little particles of uranium coated in ceramic, and they are engineered to be physically incapable of melting down. It's a design that's meant to fundamentally eliminate the risk of a meltdown, period.
So let's zoom out again for a second. This whole race for AI power, it isn't just about corporate strategy. It's deeply connected to the long-term path of human civilization and our ability to harness energy on a planetary scale. And a great way to understand this is with something called the Kardashev scale. It's a theoretical framework that classifies civilizations based on how much energy they can control, from a planetary scale to a stellar scale, all the way to a galactic scale. It's a direct measure of how technologically mature a civilization is.
So where are we right now? Well, humanity is sitting at about a type 0.73. We're still mostly burning the stored energy of dead plants and animals. A type 1 civilization, on the other hand, will be able to harness all the energy available on our planet. That's a 1,000-fold increase from where we are today. And it means mastering things like nuclear fusion and massive-scale fission. And this is where things get really fascinating. The AI energy crisis, this massive problem we're facing, could actually be the catalyst that forces us to finally make that leap. The incredible demand for power to fuel our digital intelligence could, maybe unintentionally, be the very thing that accelerates our journey to becoming a true Type I civilization. Now, in this new AI-driven world, the entire economic equation for computing is being flipped on its head. See, energy efficiency isn't just a nice-to-have cost-saving measure anymore. It's rapidly becoming the #1 driver of value. The new metric that everyone is obsessing over is tokens per watt. It's a simple idea. How much useful AI output, or tokens, do you get for every single unit of energy you pump in? This directly links the cost of electricity to your economic output, which pretty much makes it the most important number in all of AI infrastructure. So this basically creates two ways you can win the energy race. On one side, you have the brute force physical approach. Build more nuclear reactors to increase the supply of watts. But on the other, you have algorithmic efficiency. Design smarter AI models that need fewer watts to generate a token in the first place. If you can double your efficiency, it's like building an entire power plant for free.
But, before we get to this amazing nuclear-powered AI future, we have to come back down to earth and talk about the very real, very physical bottlenecks that could stop this whole revolution dead in its tracks.
See, it's not enough to just build a reactor. You have to actually get that power to the data center, and our grid is nowhere near ready. It can take up to a decade to build new high-voltage power lines. We are facing critical shortages of basic stuff like transformers, and the supply chains for raw materials like copper are stretched incredibly thin, not to mention the insane amounts of water needed for cooling everything. And just take a look at this. We're talking about a projected 30% deficit for large power transformers in the US this year. This is not some far-off, futuristic problem. It is a here-and-now crisis in the most basic, boring components of our electrical grid, and it could absolutely bottleneck the entire AI build-out.
Which really brings us to our final big question. The demand for artificial intelligence is pushing us, maybe even forcing us, toward a future powered by the atom. Now, that future promises clean, abundant 24/7 power, but it also comes with its own legacy and its own risks. So we're left to wonder, is nuclear energy the necessary price we're all going to have to pay for this next leap in intelligence?